Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Eclectic Arts virtual studio. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me this Thursday afternoon over here in Seattle, Washington, on the west coast of the U.S. And again, wherever you are in the world, hopefully you're having a good morning, afternoon, or evening. And this is live stream number 3 of 2021, and I've got quite a few scheduled interviews coming up, so I always like to mention those things before we get to today's guest. And starting on Monday, the 18th, we have part 4 of the Soap Girls from South Africa. So that will be at 7 a.m. It's an early one because of the time zone differences. And then on Tuesday, I have Bo Duran from LA, a wonderful musician, and that's going to be at, I believe, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time in the afternoon. And then the very next day, on Wednesday, I have director Lance Oppenheim, who's directed this really fascinating documentary called Some Kind of Heaven. And he will be joining me at 2 p.m. on Wednesday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to start hitting it hard again with the virtual interviews. And I have a few other ones that are pending for this month. And I just got actually an email from a publicist about setting something up for February with one of my all-time favorite musicians. So I'm hoping that we can find a day and time that works, because there's also a international time zone issue with that particular guest. But hey, so let's get to things today. Let me do this really quick because I always forget. Today, my guest is an artist of many talents. She is a professional in the disciplines of fabric, rope, trapeze, pole, stilts, duo, fire, and as a model. She is a teacher and a performer. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts virtual studio, Constance Echo Palmer. Let's bring her in. Hi.
Hey.
So how are you doing down there, Constance?
Pretty well. How are you?
Doing all right, thanks. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I understand that you were born in Germany before you came to the U.S. And so what was life like for you as young Constance when you were in Germany?
I mean, I think it's pretty normal. I'm from a really small town in southern Germany. So I grew up like right outside the Alps, and I grew up dancing and figure skating. And then when I moved to the States, it all just kind of kept escalating from there. And now I do it professionally.
Okay. Was that your interest in dance? Was that something from your family, or were you already interested as a child? Just something that you got drawn to?
Oh, I mean, I probably like many women started dancing when I was like 2 or 3. My parents put me in ballet, and I never really stopped for all that long outside of the move.
Okay. And when your family moved to the U.S., were you over on the East Coast, or were you somewhere else, or?
Yeah, we moved right here to Georgia.
Okay. So for someone like me that's never been further east than maybe like Las Vegas, what is the Georgia area like to you?
You've really never been out here?
No.
So since you're in Seattle, Georgia's really green, like Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a pretty active scene in Atlanta for music and arts and small scale theater, and there's just a ton to do, obviously, before the last year.
Right, of course. So when you were starting off, I think, again, for a lot of people that are watching this now are going to be watching this later, we really don't have, including myself, don't have a lot of knowledge background when it comes to the aerial arts and a lot of the things and the disciplines that you're a part of, that you teach. How did you first get involved, and what discipline did you start with?
I started with pole and silks, and it really was kind of just this thing where I was already a dancer, and one of my friends was like, "Oh, I discovered this thing. It's like called aerial arts. You should give it a try." And I was already an adult when I started doing aerial acrobatics, but like I said, I had a background in dance, and I tried it, and it was like instant. It was like an instant love. I was like, "This is the thing I'm going to do." And never stopped.
Wow. So when I'm thinking back, so I covered a show here. Oh gosh, I guess that would have been like 2019, where they had someone come on stage and stilts as part of their stage act. What's involved with that? Like, how do you get trained to do that? And especially when you're like, I don't know how high that performer was, but she would look like she was way up there.
Oh, for stilt walking?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you want to have stuff that you can reach when you're trying it for the first time. I was with a coach at the time, actually learning aerial way in the beginning, and she just had some stilts in her studio. And she had like a private studio at the time. She was like, oh, you should just try them on. And we have the same shoe size and walk around in them. And honestly, it's not like super difficult. It's just like having really heavy legs is really what it is. As long as you like keep your wits about you and don't lose your balance, like stay close to stuff, like it's really not that difficult.
Okay. And at least with the stilt part, when you were out performing somewhere, did you ever have accidents where you did lose your balance and you had to like try to grab a wall or something?
So I've been really lucky with the stilt walking where I've never had a spill in front of an audience member.
Okay.
There was a number of years ago, I had this like weekly standing gig, and it was a whole hodgepodge of performers. So there were like cabaret, like can dancers and aerialists and drag queens and stilt walkers and circus performers of all kinds. And I got done with my set and I went into the green room, which really in that venue was just like this super narrow closet that had two doors. It was really a tall, narrow closet. And my stilt hit like a sparkle bra, and I like just slowly. Luckily, since it was such like a narrow closet, I could just like grab the wall and just like slowly, like when a fly hits it, slid down all the way to the floor. So I've been really lucky that hasn't happened like out in front of people, but that's like the worst fall I had was wardrobe slip.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's the first thing that was going through my mind when I saw this band, and then that stilt walker came on. I was like, oh man, what happens if she has to like grab something because there's just an open stage? There was like nothing for her to do that with. But luckily, she was did her thing and walked off, and it was super cool.
Yeah.
And so the other thing too, like with some of the other disciplines, I was watching some of your videos and I saw some stuff on social media too that I'm just fascinated. You must be like stronger than all get out. So for people like me that don't understand the training and the sacrifice involved with what you do, how did you get to the point you're at now with the various disciplines? So, I mean, are you also working out in the gym while you're also training to get better at these disciplines, or how's that work?
Yeah, totally. I do a fair amount of cross training, just doing the thing itself, like whatever the aerial discipline is that anybody wants to do is strenuous. You're going to get strong just climbing a rope or getting on trapeze. But I do run to keep my cardio up, especially because when I am on tour, sometimes you do 3 shows in a day. And I've had to do like 6 or 8 acts in a day. So you want to have some good stamina. And then I do lift weights just because in aerial arts, we're always pulling and climbing and pulling our weight. And you just, like with anything, you can develop like biases in your body and imbalances. So I do some weightlifting just to like counteract that and try to stay balanced, but like you're pushing muscles too.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And good afternoon, Industrial Girl. Good to see you down in East LA who joined us right now. Yeah, because I think, again, watching your videos, and then I like I mentioned pre-show that I saw this performance at the Seattle Symphony, and they had some aerialists working with them. Just it was so fluid watching them working with. They were working with fabric, but just going up and tumbling down and all the other kind of things. But again, just like anything, the professionals make it look easy, and I know that it can't be easy. And so, are there actual, like, I know you're a teacher as well. Are there programs or certificated things that people can do to become like a certificated performer in certain disciplines?
We don't really have like certificates necessarily, but I will say that circus arts for fitness and aerial arts for fitness and for recreation have really just like exploded over the last 10 years.
Okay.
And every major city has studios in it. Actually, where you're at, there's like a handful of really, really excellent studios. And some of the better acrobats are actually from Seattle that I personally train with also.
Oh.
Um, yeah, you're in like a really great city for that. But so anyone that wants to try it, I just super recommend Googling like aerial arts studio in my town, or um, there is, maybe we can link it. There is a Google map filter that somebody created for all the aerial arts studios in the United States, because there's just so many of them now, and you can start at like any age. And this is the thing that people ask me like a lot. It's like, oh, do I have to be a child or like a gymnast to do this? And it's like, not at all. You can totally start at any age. There are introductory aerial classes on silks and trapeze and everything else. And if anyone is interested at all, I just so highly recommend trying it out, because it's the most fun you're going to have working out. It's like the most fun you're going to have getting fit. And everybody, really everybody can try it and do it. Like it's not limited by any kind of capacity.
Okay. No, that sounds great. That it's good information for people to know that yeah, if they have an interest, then don't let don't let that stop you. I mean, meaning that you could be from any skill level or no skill level and any age, and just get in there and get involved with it and kind of see where it takes.
Totally.
Um, and I know another thing that I noticed was that you have a background in fire arts, and how,
Yeah.
that's something I've seen from the metal scene where people are breathing fire or what have you on stage. But I mean, you do fire, you do much more with it than just that. So can you speak to your fire background, please?
Yeah, that's it's such like a random hodgepodge of how everything happened. Um, when I was 18, um, like a couple of years ago, um, I was waiting tables in downtown Atlanta at a restaurant called R. Thomas, which is like it's a very famous 24-hour like organic restaurant that has parrots. So it was already like kind of an eclectic place. And this man came into the restaurant and he was like, "You look like you would fit in a box." And I was like, "You sound a little creepy. Um, but tell me more. What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, I'm a magician and I need a new assistant because mine like moved away and I have shows coming up and I think that you could do the job." Super random. He was a friend of the owner, so I asked my boss. I was like, "Hey, Jimmy, is this guy like really a magician?" He's like, "Yeah, you should go hang out with him." So I went and linked up with this magician, and he taught me how to do different kind of tricks, like the getting cut in half in the box thing, and then how to work with different exotic birds and doves and coin tricks and card tricks. And he taught me how to eat fire one night after a gig. He's like, "Oh, we should like get you up to speed on this aspect too." Um, and here we are. I just started adding more and more props to the fire repertoire too, but that's really how I started in circus arts, was as a magician's assistant.
Okay. And those early lessons working with fire, I mean, did you have, is it typical that people like singe their eyebrows off, or they have other kind of issues from trying to swallow stuff, or?
No, I mean, you can like singe your eyebrows off if it's windy or something. But I was really fortunate that I had a teacher that was super, super experienced. And I started with like really small little fire torches and like got with bigger and bigger fire from there. So I had a really great mentor who taught me like all the proper fuels to use and the proper safety equipment to have around, and all the things that you need to do, because like I said, there's not really any kind of like school for this or certification for that. It's really just about like finding a good mentor that is going to teach you the right way and keep you safe.
Okay. That kind of goes along. We have a comment here about how do you protect yourself from all that fire, and your answer kind of goes along with that. But there anything else you'd wanted to add? Like when you're actually performing, is there certain things that you're trying to do? Is it just strictly from, again, having a good mentor and having proper training?
Yeah, and I mean, it's really like you keep an eye on your environment. If you're performing indoors or outdoors, you want to check the weather, check the wind. You want to make sure that you always have like a designated person that's there watching you, like a fire safety. And they're in charge of like monitoring the fuel so nobody messes with it off stage. And because somebody might like accidentally move your stuff when it's backstage. As a musician, like backstage is kind of crazy sometimes. Mm-hmm. So you always have like a designated side stage person that has like your safety gear. They're watching you, they're watching the environment, they're watching your fuel. And that definitely is like the best way to mitigate risk. And that's kind of really the name of the game in circus. Like, a lot of circus arts are inherently just a little bit dangerous, so you just mitigate risk as much as possible.
Okay, all right. And you've mentioned more than once that when you've been on tour, when you've been on doing shows and things of that nature, so what kind of tours have you done? What companies? What can you tell me about that aspect?
Big and small. I kind of have done a huge variety of performance work. Anything from, I've worked in a traditional circus, in a tent, like touring the United States, really like Americana, and that was super fun. That was 2018, and then I've toured the motorcycle rally circuit. That started 2015 or 16. So I did that for a few years, and I work in the motorcycle world, I work with a group called the Cherry Bombs, and we've actually done 2 U.S. tours, like national U.S. tours, and we performed in South America. And 2020, like, just didn't even happen. At the end of 2019 was like our last set of shows, and then 2020 to me, like, just didn't even happen. I was like, oh, it was just last year. Nope, that was 2 years ago now, almost, right?
Yeah. No, I'm in the same boat as a lot of other artistic people are. It's like when I think back to things like, oh yeah, it's been a year since I started covering the opera. It's like, no, Mark, it's been 2 years. You just didn't get to see any shows last year.
Exactly, it's like a time warp.
Yeah, it's crazy. And every now and then social media will remind me, especially with Facebook, about, oh, 2 years ago you were doing this, or last year you were doing that, and just kind of like, oh.
Don't tell me. Yeah, and like the last year, everything's just been going virtual, so I haven't performed but once live in 2020. All the other shows that I did in 2020 were all like a variety of different virtual shows, big and small, cabarets and curated shows and different things like that.
Okay. And when you were mentioning the Cherry Bombs, I'm wondering if I'm almost positive they did some sort of live stream like earlier this month, because there was a venue here that was saying that you can check out the live stream like on maybe even the 1st of January or something. And
so our show was January 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And so here's what happened with that. So I've worked with the Cherry Bombs for 7 years now, I think. We were slated to tour the United States in May of 2020, and then again in the fall. And we have been working really hard on building a full-length show, because typically we just get like a slot when we tour. So we built this full-length show. It's a 90-minute live show, and it's more theatrical than anything we've ever done. Well, we all know what happened in March. We were supposed to go on tour in May. So everything got pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And then here we were in like October. Everything's a blur. Towards the end of 2020, we decided, well, this entire year, our entire year of shows has been like postponed to 2021 now. And some of it like 2022 even. So we want to put this workout that we've built for a live show. So we filmed it as a virtual show. And it's kind of like the feel of like, it's really theatrical, but there isn't dialogue. It's like an extended circus dance music video. Yeah, so that was really rad. That was like the biggest project that we had on the books for the year. We filmed that. We just put it out. It's called Macabre. So it's like this really kind of creepy horror, but dance, rock and roll, fantastic, like mystical cirque feel of a show. And yeah, so we put that out. It is the like virtual version of our live show. So when we are finally allowed to hit the stage again, we will be touring it live one day.
Cool. No, it sounds awesome. Yeah. When you mentioned that, it's like, wait a minute, I know that name.
Yeah, that's us.
Yeah. And I was just kind of just sometimes my mind just goes on a total tangent, and I'm just noticing your shirt that you're wearing. Are you a horror fan then as well?
Yeah. This is actually this shirt is from Fright Rags. It's a Motley Crue shirt. They're actually one of our sponsors too, but I just love their shirts. This is not a commercial. But yeah, Fright Rags makes really great horror shirts.
I am familiar with them. I have probably 3 from.
Aren't they so soft?
Yeah, they're soft. I love the design stuff because I have the one that is a kind of a parody of the Kiss Destroyer cover with Freddy and Jason and Chucky and I think Leatherface all doing the Destroyer album cover, but with those guys, and it has like the kill dates on the back or whatever.
Yeah. I love the mashup parodies that they do. It's hilarious.
Yeah, good stuff for sure. And gosh, I mean, you've been doing this, like you mentioned, the aerial work, and just you've had your hands in so many different things. Is there an artistic area that you want to move into in the future, like something you haven't dabbled with yet?
Oh, that's tough. I don't really think discipline-wise. Like I really like the circus arts. I'm really like at home here, and it's a never-ending journey. There's always new things to learn, new skills to learn. There's always ways of refining your movement. So really just want to train more in that regard. And then just like get back to live audiences. Like that's the main thing for me. I'm super grateful for all the, like we were saying earlier, I'm grateful for all the virtual opportunities, but it's not the same.
Yep, I know all too well. And it's kind of like this is what's tiding us over until we get back to being in front of actual people. For me, on either side, if I'm there reviewing things, or if I'm actually on a stage again, or that type of thing, playing music, it's just like it never gets better. Because at least for us up here, all eyes were on Seattle around the end of January when the pandemic first started, because that's where it first got reported. And so it's like, okay, they thought it was going to be maybe 3 months, and then we got to summer, and then it pushed to cases are increasing, and then it pushed to fall, and all this other kind of stuff. And here we are in 2021, and I'm seeing like over in Europe, some of those tours are already getting pushed to 2022, the bigger ones, because they just figure they can't do it, but then they're holding on and crossing their fingers that maybe by summer some of the smaller ones can maybe still happen there, and maybe the same thing over here. I just got a notification from a publicist about a tour that's supposed to be happening, I think, in June here in the U.S., but they'll have to kind of see. I mean, at least here in Seattle, I don't know what's like down in Georgia, but I'm just hoping the venues are still around for them, the people to play in, and that the promoters are still there, and the bookers and everybody else involved with bringing live entertainment to the people.
Yeah, for sure. I think just the size of audience that a lot of these tours require, just because if you're going to book all these bands that are or artists of various kinds that are big names, they cost money, there's a lot of equipment to fly around. So you have to have a certain size audience to make it all worthwhile and make it happen, so that the venues and promoters and everyone are not losing a bunch of money on the shows. So I'm really interested to see how it trickles back in. I think smaller type shows are going to start to come back, like you were saying in the summer. I performed in one live show. It was like Halloween weekend, but we did an outdoor show. So it was an outdoor show, and it was like a bring your own chair, wear a mask, and stay in your bubble kind of show. And the audience was really limited. So that worked fine enough for a weekend, but it gets tricky when they're bigger. Have you seen any of the shows that they started doing in the UK with the little like designated audience, like people pens? It really they look like little play pens for adults with like your little beer cooler.
That's the perfect way to describe it. Yeah, I remember seeing some of those things like maybe it was going around social media like in the summertime where they're showing here's what's starting to happen for like bigger concerts. Yeah, you have like your little area, your playpen of like you and your friends or your family members or your household or whatever, and then there's like a big old gap, and then there's another one and another one, and they're just all kind of like this. And it's like, hey, if that's what it takes, for the interim, the transition to being able to see something, that's like, okay, I would consider that depending on like, cost and everything else and who's performing. But yeah, at least there's like, I guess that's the other piece of it too, is that seeing how creative people are trying to find some way to transition, before we can do a complete 180 to what it used to be like. So that's been kind of fascinating. And I think there was something else in the UK too, like in the theaters, they're trying to figure out like doing it like skip a row. And the big thing, you can have 4 or 5 people, and then there's going to be a gap of a couple seats, and then they can have another 4 or 5 people. But to your point that you mentioned earlier, which is a really, really good one, is that any artists or bands or whoever that's touring, they need every show. They can't just go, well, we're going to do Washington State, Oregon, and California. Oh, but now there's restrictions when you start moving east. So we can't do these states. We got like 2 days of travel with no income. It doesn't add up. And if those venues only have like say 50% capacity or whatever, the numbers don't start adding up. So it's kind of like, it's gonna be rough. But I agree with you. I think that's going to be like the smaller things will be coming back. I also feel that especially like when we start getting the warmer weather, outdoor things will probably be the first conduit that people probably feel fairly safe. There'll be some more of the vaccine will have taken hold, hopefully with some larger audiences and that kind of thing. So I told people at the end of 2020, I'm hoping that 2021 ends better than it starts because it should.
Yeah,
it should. For some reason, if we have some other thing that blindsides us and it ends up not working out this way, then it's going to be like, okay, I give up. I don't know what else to do at this point. We're all hanging on, and I think we'll see something that will get people out safely, but still allow entertainers to do their thing and have an income and all the other.
People have been adapting a lot. There's actually a circus. I think they're currently in like Arizona that are doing a drive-in. And so I've also seen drive-in movies come back. We have a drive-in movie theater that's always existed in Atlanta. And it's just one of our like little cult things that we have. But it's popping, and I've seen some drive-in concerts. And obviously it's just not going to be the same as like being able to like hug and high five your friends at the show. And like as a performer, meeting the audience, like meeting people in the crowd, meeting the fans is really like just fulfilling. And like, that's the fun of it. Like, yeah, this was great, but I'm going to take whatever I can get. If there's a drive-in concert and I want to see a band, I'm going to go and just do whatever we need to for this year.
Yeah, and it's a good way to put it. It really is kind of all you can do. It's just like, here's some opportunities, whatever they are, big or small, and then you can decide whether you want to partake in them. And I think a lot of people are going to want to partake in them because they've been holding on for so long. And I do see another question came in about, have you performed at any conventions, so maybe horror conventions or pop culture conventions? Or
Yes. This is a funny one. Okay, there is a convention here in Atlanta that I like to go to for fun because I'm a giant dork. It's called Dragon Con.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you're familiar.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, so here in Atlanta, we have a group called Girls of the Con. And it's like, a bunch of ladies that go cosplay and go to the convention and do all the panels and do all the parties. And they had a pre-con event. It's like the Thursday night when everyone's arriving at Dragon Con. This was a few years ago. And I performed with a group called Miss Kiss. And we were a Kiss cover dance group. So I was Miss Peter Chris. And it was like one of the most fun gigs ever. It was at the Hard Rock Cafe in Atlanta, Dragon Con weekend, 2014 or 15 or something like that. It was, yeah. So I've done that. That's like the big one that sticks out for me is performing with Girls of the Con.
That's cool. That's cool. I've covered Crypticon Seattle here like 6 years, and they have something too. Oh my gosh, they're going to kill me. But they have a designated, no pun intended, but they have a group of girls that were not the cryptid ghouls, but they kind of do the same thing. So they kind of help out with just getting the vibe together, and also help out with there might be some performance things, just kind of being seen, almost like ambassadors. And I love that thing. I love that convention. I've been to Emerald City Comic Con here. I've covered Ace Comic Con twice. So that culture, you're just around people that are just like you. So it's really cool that to see different. And that's right. They had a strong. Oh gosh, Crypticon had somebody over. Well, again, it would have been 2019.
Yeah.
That. What was she doing? It was some sort of like a performance art piece. Cause I remember I walked in there and I didn't know what was going on, so I was kind of just checking it out for a while. And oh gosh, I forgot what else she did. But it was to your point of being involved with that kind of thing. It's just really fun, either as a fan or as a performer, or in some cases both. So that's really cool.
Yeah, Comic-Con would be like a dream, performing it. Yeah, that would be rad.
I'm just kind of curious, where did your interest in pop culture, horror, geeky, nerdy things come from?
Gosh, I don't even know. I mean, I was a Magic the Gathering kid. I was definitely from that era. I was a Dungeons and Dragons kid, and I played MUDs in high school. For any of you that know what those are. So I don't know. I think it just starts for all of us. It just starts on a tabletop game, or it starts in a card game. And I've always liked sci-fi. When I moved to the States, my grandmother always gave me English books to read because I grew up speaking both languages. I am both. But I didn't read and write English until I moved here. So I kind of learned how to read English on my grandmother's different little sci-fi zines. And she was like a giant Isaac Asimov fan. And so I think she was a big influence too.
Okay. That makes sense. I mean, even for myself, the first band I ever saw was Kiss. And I remember they put out the comic books, so that brought me into a comic book store, which then got me into looking at what are these other things, and going down to the local convenience store and buying the latest issue of Batman or Spider-Man, and then seeing Star Wars and all that other kind of stuff. Just all kind of piles together.
Yeah, it does. But the original Star Wars. Yeah. Also, the town I moved to when I moved to the States. It was a small town, really far south of Atlanta. And the cool thing to do really was to go hang out at this place called Tim's. And it was a comic book shop. And they had tabletop games in the back and Magic tournaments on the weekends. And that was just the thing that we did.
Cool. There's a shop around here. Oh gosh, Around the Table. God, they're going to kill me too. But at one point, I had a little pit stop of a job where I was selling craft beer, and this particular store, because they had the same type of thing that tournaments, and you can bring all your friends and book tables and all that kind of stuff for your games and your RPGs. But they'd love to have like craft soda, beer,
Oh yeah.
the best ice cream, the best snack that you can get around in this area. So they didn't want like the corporate thing at all. And so that's how I got my way in there. And those guys treated me really well. And I've actually been back to just even just pick up ice cream or something, just because I want to give them business. But it's amazing seeing that kind of community. And people that aren't in it, they don't even realize it's there. They just go, oh, that's just some geek playing whatever. It's like, no, there's this whole thing. It's like a big underground, well, not even underground, it's a big movement basically, and it's always been there.
Yeah.
For sure. I have a quick question for you. As we were talking about 2020 and just how nuts it's been, and you've been teaching, and so have you been teaching through Zoom, I assume, or something similar?
Yes. So when I'm not on tour, I do teach different movement arts. I teach a bit of Pilates, I teach a bit of aerial, I teach a bit of like fitness, flexibility, like circus related skills. And I typically like do workshop tours or masterclass tours in my like off seasons now. Once upon a time, I had a studio space as well. But so kind of because like you were saying, the cases were like out in Seattle and up in New York. So we could like see the wave at the beginning of 2020. I pretty quickly thought like, oh man, I gotta move this virtual. I had a few virtual students at the time in Europe and in Australia. So even before, just based on like geography, like you meet people on the road and they're like, oh, I want to train with you again. Can we do it on like FaceTime? So I just made the switch pretty early on, and I am still teaching on Zoom primarily from right here.
Okay, yeah. Well, it sounds like since you already had some background in doing virtual teaching, that when you made that move, it wasn't like the night and day shock it's been to some people that had done nothing like that, and they're like, oh, now I have to teach guitar lessons through a computer and things like
Yeah.
that. So okay, so that was a silver lining then, in terms of you were ready to kind of make the move and make the jump. Um, have you found, having said that though, have you found that trying to teach through virtual lessons difficult during this time?
It was like kind of a wave, because when it first happened and I was like, oh, this is so great. I can just like walk from my kitchen to my office and teach a class and then like be home, because Atlanta, the worst traffic. And I actually am outside of town. So typically like to go to a studio, it's an hour commute just to get into town. So I was like, this is so great. And that lasted for like 2 or 3 months. And I was like, oh my God, I just want to see you in real life. So that's really the big hang up, is not being able to be in the room with people. You don't realize how important that is just for community and for your students too, because they're just a bunch of little like squares on the screen waving at each other. But they've lost that community as well. And then the really big difficulty is for my more advanced students, at a certain point, they need a spot, and I can't do that through the screen. So there's certain skills that I just can't give them, like, oh, you're so close. If I could just like be there. So it's great because we can connect from everywhere in the world. Like I actually take a ton of Zoom classes. I take Pilates classes with a studio in Hawaii, actually. And I take some contortion with a woman in California, and I take some straps with a guy in Minnesota. And so it's really nice to be able to connect with people. But like I said, it's at a certain point, you're just like, God, I just want to high five you.
Yeah, or like you were saying, that you can't spot somebody. It's not like you can reach through your computer and it's like, okay, now go ahead and try that again or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
oh man. And so, and maybe we don't really know this, but to kind of wrap this up, what are you hoping for from 2021, or do you already have a few things, even like personal projects or professional projects that you are kind of working on during this time?
Yeah. I put out an online course in 2020, and I'm putting out another one this year. So not being on tour is giving me the opportunity to work on projects like that. I'm also involved in a research project right now with Spelman University, and we're presenting, or Spelman College, sorry, we're presenting at a conference about like embodied metaphors. So it's like a movement research that I'm a part of, which is really interesting. And that's virtual, which I'm able to do because I'm here. So I'm trying to fill my time with things that I can't do when I'm touring. When you're on the road, it's like, it's all consuming because you're just in this bubble and you're like, go, go, go. So there's not really space for other things. And then I'm just working on like my own training and education and like learning more skills and those kinds of things. And then I have this year, well, I guess it was last year now, I'm slowly making the transition from live performance into trying to work more on camera. Like I said, we did the big Macabre virtual show, and I'm submitting to various little horror projects to do some like creature work and do some stunt work. Yeah, so that's been fun.
Cool. Oh, that sounds like that's great that you have a lot of things that are already moving forward or already been continuing into this year, and I love hearing the fact that when artists can say, yeah, I've got this coming up and this coming up, and I'm working on that, and because especially last year, some of the folks, they didn't have much. They weren't on a set because all the sets were closed. They're like, yeah, Mark, when do you want to do the interview? I got time.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
totally.
so it worked out well for me, maybe not so well for them, but yeah, as we've been saying, hopefully things start to get back to what people can enjoy and see and appreciate, and actually have that exchange of energy in person, which can't be replaced, and we all know it. So, um, anything that you'd like to plug? That's coming up, website, social media, anything else to let people out there know where they can find you?
Yes, since you mentioned it, and it's like our big baby right now because the show with Cherry Bombs, Macabre, we are actually going to be streaming it again. The date for that isn't set yet, but that information will be on my social media, which is like if you at Circus Echo on any of the things and easy to find, or at whitedogsaloon.com. And we are putting out our third season of, we have a small web series called Girl Gang, and we have 2 seasons of it out. If you want to know what it's like to be on the road with a bunch of rock and roll women, it's like the behind the scenes, the nitty gritty, the real honest. This is what happens when you're on tour. We have 2 seasons out. Season 3 is dropping like February. But yeah, so we have just a bunch of Cherry Bomb stuff coming up. And if you missed Macabre, I so highly recommend it. I got to do a bunch of acts in it. I got to perform my rope act with my aerial partner, a cube act. I did a bunch of fire stuff. I performed a new fabric act that I'm super, super proud of. And yeah, it's dope.
Awesome. That sounds great. And thank you so much, Constance, for taking the time today. I really enjoyed our interview conversation, and I wish you nothing but the best for 2021. And yeah, like I told other people, if things kind of get back to where we were, then I won't necessarily be here, and you won't be there either because you'll be on the road or you'll be doing performances, and we'll have to connect when people are all back home taking breaks from what they normally did. So again, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I mean, when things are back to normal, hopefully we'll see each other on the road. Like maybe you'll be on a tour, I'll be on a tour, and our buses will cross and we can meet in real life.
That would be awesome. That's going to help float the rest of my day. Just that idea.
It's going to happen. I mean, this too shall pass. This is temporary. We all just got to hold on and, we'll get back to it. We'll get back to putting on live shows.
Yeah. Thanks everybody that's watching. And Industrial, thanks for noticing that I changed my background. I actually did that earlier, like a week ago. But again, thank you everybody for tuning things in, and check Constance's work out online. And I'll talk to everybody sooner than later. All right. Take care.
Bye.